All right. So, so Jill is smart because now remember, Jim and Jill are dating, and so Jill's smart because Jim approaches Jill and says, "Hey, I need $100, okay?" And well, Jill could let Jim borrow that $100, but she does something which I consider to be more intelligent. Okay, she doesn't loan the money; she sells the money in exchange for 10 credits. Okay, what the going rate for whatever the credits are. So she sells the money for the credits, and so so Jim credits her in the system. She pays the money. Jim has the money. It's not a loan. It's actually selling. Okay, and now the reason why Jill was so smart about this is that well, the next day or maybe 3 weeks later, Jill finds out that Jim's been cheating on her. I think that's, yeah, Jim has a secret lover. I think I named her Susie. Anyway, so so Jill finds out about this. She's upset and she breaks up with Jim. And then Jim gets mad. He says, "I'm not paying you ever." Okay, so Jill, with the broken heart, wants to have dinner or lunch with let's say dinner with a good friend, and so that she goes to the market. She goes to Foods Inc. and she buys some food, okay, to have this dinner. And a funny thing happens under the system. I have this diagram here and another diagram, the next diagram here, and these two diagrams are to represent a payment of $3 from Jill to Foods Inc. Okay? Now, this system would process the payment by actually relieving Jim's debt to Jill, okay? Right? Relieving that debt. Paying off that debt. Okay, that's how the system would process this payment. And also, it would relieve Foods Inc.'s debt to Jim. Okay, so by relieving two debts, it makes this payment. Okay, and the program is set up where if it can make a payment by relieving debts, it probably will. Okay, there's an issue if there's more than 7, 8 people involved. There's a really hard problem to solve, and so it's not. It's a really good implementation. It's not. It would just take too much computer time to actually solve the problem exactly. Okay, but that's what happened. So instead of loaning Jim the money directly, and then Jim says he's not going to pay, then Jill would be left with nothing to do, or no way to go back on this. But since Jill bought food from Foods Inc., that actually relieved the debt. So this debt that Jim had to Jill actually had value to Jill. Okay, on the system, right? So that's where this selling comes along. You're trading value for value. Okay, good. And so that's showing that debts can, not always, but they can be paid without the debtor intending to pay. Okay, and that's a big deal when you're lending money, right? If you're lending money, you generally don't want to lend it unless you know you're going to get it back, or at least are reasonably certain you're going to get it back. And that's a hard thing among our community here. Sometimes people are making loans to start businesses, other things. There's good ideas that might need to get off the ground, and so this would provide a way to provide some capital. Probably not finance a huge project, but it'll provide some capital to do some project. Okay, so other applications. Credits can be exchanged for any currency or good, including silver. Okay, that's one application. And I put the including silver in there very specifically. Okay, because if we use such a thing as Shire Hours, and if the debt gets too big that it's hard to pay in the system, well, you can just transfer some silver and have that person credit you, and you've got that debt paid off. Okay, so and if you're using silver, you completely not access any type of government at all, right? Right. I mean, and this is really what I think it would take to be a free people. This alone, this one issue. You get the money right, the rest will fall. There still will be people doing the wrong thing, but at least you could remove yourself from it. Okay, and that's the empowering. That's why with this currency issue is so important. It is, and if this doesn't work, maybe something else will work. I'm really don't care what works. I just want something to work. And a big deal about this thing is understanding. It takes a while for people to wrap their minds around this type of idea. Okay, so another application is credits can be used as change in silver transactions. I think this is a huge application. Okay, so say you want to buy something for 0.3 ounces. Okay, well, why not just give them the equivalent amount of credits? Maybe if there's a one-way trust relationship, maybe you could give them an ounce of silver and get 0.7 ounces credit. Okay? Right? So it works as long as there's one direction of trust there. And generally, if somebody's a merchant, they're going to be fairly trustworthy. Okay? If they're not trustworthy, especially in our community, they won't be a merchant for long. Okay? So that's not too much of an assumption to assume that a merchant is trustworthy. Okay, but you shouldn't take that for granted. Okay, so payments can be made across long distances between trusted parties, right? If you're making a transaction that's, you want to buy a blender from somebody in California that's going to ship it to you, well, to do silver, you'd have to ship the silver back. Well, you could just give them some credit and, settle up when the time's due, or maybe there's other transactions that happen that settle up that debt. Okay, good. So that's one thing. There's no processing fee. Compare credit cards. Okay. In fact, when I heard about this idea, I had a idea, I thought, well, this could be implemented as a credit card, right? But it would take a bit much to do that. But with the way it's set up, right, and even though you don't have a physical credit card with you, on the advanced phones where you can access the internet, you can actually just make a payment through the phone itself. So you might not have a credit card on you, but you have your phone on you, click, 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 payment made. In fact, I have used this system to sell a loaf of bread. I said, loaf of bread, it's going to cost you so much. It's the equivalent of 0.15 ounces of silver in my mind. And he said, okay, I've made the payment, and he just clicked on the phone. I knew the party, I knew who was buying the bread, so it's like, okay, I just trusted he made the payment. Gave him the bread, sure enough, the payment was there. And so this is actually being used right now in New Hampshire. Okay, so good. And if you use a credit card, usually I charge the merchant some fees. Well, this is a free service that's provided, it's partially donation supported, but you don't need to donate. It's really actually very cheap to run this type of server. Okay, it encourages trades between friends. Okay, that's a big deal. So when you have an environment like this, right down the way, there's Agora Alley. Okay, you have what amounts to basically friends, or at least there is a friend trust network. There are people from out of state coming in, but often they'll have some connection somehow. I mean, it's the strange attractor. Somehow we all flock together. I don't know why. Anyway, so here we have this trade among friends because people believe in trade. They believe in the value of actually producing something and providing it to somebody else and achieving and receiving payment for it. So that's one thing. So in this type of environment that we're in right now, this Shire Hours would actually even encourage it more. Okay, imagine not even having to carry around Federal Reserve notes and just clicking to make payments. That would be absolutely wonderful. Okay. And maybe have a few ounces of silver in your pocket, so if your account gets low, you pay them an ounce and you get your changing credits. Okay, so that's I mean, really, you probably could get by on, well, if you wanted to spend a lot of things, you probably could, or spend a lot of money, you probably could get by on 5-10 ounces. Okay, if you didn't want to spend a lot of money, well, you could probably get by on 2. If you just wanted to pay money for food. Okay. And this is another big deal. There's no, in this type of system, there's no central stash of silver. Okay? You have an account, you use that account to, or you use your, basically your word or your honor to back that account. Okay, the value that you'll make good on those debts if they're called in or whatever. That's where the value is derived. Okay? And there's no central stash of silver. So you might have a little silver, I might have a little silver, you might have a little silver. And together, we've got the value there, but there's no stash. Okay? And the reason why it's such a big deal is because of the example that we have of the Liberty Dollar. The Liberty Dollar tried to have a centralized store of silver that was used to back what they called Waterhouse receipts. Well, sure enough, the FBI walked into the Sunshine Mint and took all of the silver that was there, backing the receipts. Okay. After that happened, the receipts are more or less either worthless or collector's items, depends on how you view it. But still, it costs, in my mind, it makes me lose faith in these receipts that last indefinitely, and where there's a central stash. In our current environment, you can't be certain that nobody will come in and take it all, okay? Right? Even if you take reasonable precautions, because when the FBI walks in, it's really hard to say, no, we don't want to give you the silver.